Hi guys, what is up and welcome to my channel. So today let's talk about composition. So composition is to make your photo more appealing to the viewer's eye, or even to lead the viewer's eye to a certain point or subject within your photo. Have you ever heard the quote by Picasso saying, "Learn the rules like a pro, so you can break them like an artist"? Well, this is also for composition. Learn all the techniques and rules there is to composition, and then break a few of them. But composition do help a lot within your photography. So even when you are breaking them, there will still be a few traces of them within your photo. Although there is one rule you should never ever break when it comes to composition: the crooked horizon line. Everyone is guilty of this one. Everyone did it. I know I did. I'm guilty of it. So keep your horizon line horizontal. A crooked horizontal line is not pleasing to the eye, so do not break this rule. Now there is a lot of composition techniques. I can at least think of 25 on top of my head right now, but let's only go with the 20 most common techniques of composition. So I'm not gonna go into too much detail of each one, because or else we will sit here the whole day. So let's just keep it at 20. So you might be wondering why there's so many different composition techniques and rules. Well, basically because not every rule applies to every scene. Okay, so we do have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Okay, rule number 1, and probably the most common and mostly used one, is the rule of thirds. So basically your screen is divided into 9 sections, 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines. And where the lines intersect is the thirds of the image. And if you place your subject on any one of these intersections, your image will become so much more pleasing. Okay, so rule number 2, framing. So no, this does not mean framing a picture and hanging it up on your wall. It is using something to frame the subject of your image. This will automatically guide the viewer's eye to the subject. Now you can frame your image with archways, bridges, rails, or you can go a little bit more natural and use caves, mountains, branches of trees, leaves. But just remember, there is a difference between framing it with a branch or leaves and just being in the way and a distraction. Okay, rule number 3, repetition. This is exactly what it sounds like when something is repeated once or twice. Now don't get this mixed up with patterns. Patterns is when something is repeated several times, not just once or twice. Rule number 4, leading lines. This is basically like an arrow in your photo showing the viewer where they should look. So there are lines, leading lines, that leads the viewer's eyes to where they should look. And leading lines can again be several different objects. It can be roads, buildings, or it can be a river or a line of trees. And then rule number 5 is negative space. This will be when you leave the space around your subject empty, so your subject will draw the eyes of the viewer. Rule number 6, color. So this is basically just knowing which colors work well together and which don't. And then by knowing that, it will just create a much more pleasing image. Rule number 7, balancing elements. So this is when you have a strong subject in the foreground and you have a smaller subject in the background. and then this balance out the foreground element. Rule number 8, parental focus or selective focus. So here is where you make your main subject sharp and in focus, and you have a narrow depth of field, so you have a blurry background. Rule number 9, symmetry. This is when parts of your composition mirror other parts. So this is when two halves of the scene looks the same. Rule number 10, patterns. So this is when something is repeated more than once or twice. This can be shapes, objects, lines, as long as it's repeated more than twice. Just to remember when you use the pattern composition that you want to fill the whole frame with your subject. Rule 11, layers. So layers in photography create more depth, and this makes a more interesting composition. So layers are created by ensuring there is a foreground, a middle ground, and also a background. And then rule number 12, a depth of field. So this is basically up to you as a photographer, whether you want a shallow depth of field or a deep depth of field, it doesn't matter. So a shallow DOF is the subject is in focus with a blurry background, and a deep DOF is usually the aim to create front to back details. And then rule number 13, viewpoint. This is basically just changing your position. So this will be from which angle are you shooting your subject from. Are you down low, or are you up high? Whichever way. But each different angle will add something different to your photo. Rule number 14, triangles. So triangles create a dynamic tension with your image, so it makes the composition a lot more interesting. Rule number 15, fill the frame. Well, this is the easy one. It basically describes what you have to do. So you fill your whole frame with the subject. This can be a person, an object, or a pattern. Rule number 16, simplicity. So this is a very pleasing and a restful composition technique. And then moving on to rule number 17, from left to right. Well, the name says it all. You basically photograph something like movement from left to right. So the movement will be going from left to right. And this also goes well with rule 18, the rule of space. This is by giving your subject room to move within your frame. So there should be space in front of your subject in which the direction that they are moving. Rule number 19, the rule of odds. This is just using odd numbers in your photography. So instead of 2 objects, you get 3 or 5 objects, an uneven number. And rule number 20, the golden triangle. Now this is a little bit more advanced, but if you know the rule of thirds, this will be easy for you. So basically your main subject should describe the shape of a triangle. So here you will use diagonals for a more dynamic feel. So basically there will be 2 intersections, one to the left and one to the right. And with those 2 intersections is where you are aiming to put your points of interest. Okay, so there you have 20 compositions to improve your photography. So some of these rules do contradict each other, but that is why not every composition rule or technique is for every scene. It's up to you as a photographer to decide which 1 or 2 or 3 compositions you're going to use within your image. So once you learn these compositions, it will become second nature to you. It will be a lot easier to see it, and a lot of the compositions rules are similar but not quite, and you will notice that for taking one photo, instead of incorporated only 1 compositions, you have 2 or 3. So we did cover quite a lot today. We didn't cover all the compositions, but we covered the first 20, the most commonly used and easiest to do. So next week we will talk about how to break some of these composition rules. Thank you so much for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please do give it a thumbs up and also do remember to subscribe. Until the next video, bye guys. Do contradict. So some of these rules do contradict it. So some of these rules do contradict. So some of these rules do contradict each